Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is David Ceccarelli. I'm from the State Water Board's fee branch, and today is the Drinking Water Fee Stakeholder Meeting. To the right of me is John Weir, also part of the fee branch, and to the left of me is John Russell, Deputy Director of the Division of Administrative Services. Before we go ahead and get started, we'll go ahead through a few housekeeping rules. In case of an emergency, you're asked to exit the doors, go down the stairs, and we'll meet across the park. And then when they ask us to come back in, we'll be escorted back into the building. Restrooms are outside of the doors to the left, and there's also a cafeteria on the first floor. There are agendas. If you don't have one, there's agendas on the desk, and if you haven't, please go ahead and sign in. This meeting is being webcast, so those in the room that do have questions, please wait. A mic will be passed around, and that way those online can hear the questions. For those online that do have questions, please go ahead and send them to the email address that are on the that's on the webcast link that's on the agenda, and we'll get to those as we can. Before I get started in the meeting, of course, just kind of recapping the agenda, nothing's really changed since our last meeting in June. Of course, this is the third meeting based on the budget process. We had a meeting shortly after the January's proposed budget was released on January 10th, and then another meeting right after the May revise, and now we're, again, just kind of recapping and having a discussion after the enacted budget that was passed a few weeks ago. And like I said, most of these adjustments that we've kind of already kind of recapped and discussed, there were, of course, 3 budget change proposals that were in the governor's enacted budget, which made some adjustments to the safe drinking water account. And one was the drinking water system sanitary survey, one was the increased drinking water laboratory services, and then one was the Inyo County primacy delegation budget change proposal. And the first 2, those were discussed. They were part of the January budget, so they were discussed at that time. And they've been kind of through the process the whole time. No changes have been made to them. The third one, the Inyo County, that was part of the May revision, and that was discussed at our last meeting. And again, of course, we're happy to answer any questions if needed. I will, again, I'll move this over to John Weir here. He can discuss a little bit about our cost drivers and kind of that breakdown and how the fund condition's looking. But again, I think John will agree with me at this point. This is basically almost the same information that we provided at the previous meeting.
Yes, hi. Again, my name is John Weir. And with regards to the fund condition, this is largely what we showed you back in June. Because of the enacted budget, the 1920 Budget Act, we did find a few changes, very slight. If you were to compare what we're showing you today versus in June, we have a little more information on other revenue. If you look on behind me on what we have for the second line in revenue, other revenue, that's the revenue we make from our investments at the Treasurer's Office. We now can confirm what that return is. When we add that back in, it does make our bottom line a little better, but it really doesn't change any of the decisions we have to make. What we have now is fundamentally, we still need a 10% increase in order to get us out of the budget deficit and into a reasonable fund reserve. So what we, of course, are needing, why we need to increase funds beginning for this year is because of the BCPs largely. We do have a little bit of an adjustment for other matters. BCPs are what are driving the need for the increase. The 10% increase is to be put forth across the entire board of all our fees. We prepared a little bit of a demonstration of what that looks like. When I mean across the board, that not only is going to be for the community water systems, but also for the wholesalers, transient non-community, and non-transient non-community. Again, keeping to our tradition of applying increases across the whole board, we've done that this year, 10%.
So let me just add just a little bit. Again, I kind of mentioned this the last few meetings. This would be our first increase in the last, 3 years. And if you were to look at the fund condition, we're driving the reserve down from 16% to 10%. And so we're still using some of that reserve to cover some of our expenditures. And, I've talked about this in several meetings. Our expenditures are still exceeding revenue by about $1.3 million. So, I'll continue to kind of monitor that because we know we don't want to get that number too far out of in line, with the expenditures and revenue. So this is drawing us closer to that number. And again, of course, kind of maintaining a prudent reserve of about 10%. And the other thing that, and we've talked about this in our other meetings with water quality and with water rights, one of the struggles this year, and it's been going on for basically almost a year and a half, is the fiscal system that we're dealing with, the state accounting system that's put into place. And our accounting team and the system itself, at this point, we're still working through the numbers to try to identify the true expenditure and the true revenue numbers. So when we put these numbers in, we still going through some manual processes and doing a few projections. But we're, at this point, our professional opinion on this is that we're really close and that we feel we'll end the reserve with about a 10% reserve. And then it allows us then to, monitor it next year when, we have better expenditure numbers and better revenue numbers, and make that decision of whether we needed an increase next year. Are there any questions at this point? Any questions online? Any questions from the audience? So just kind of talking a little bit about next steps. We're going to take a item to the board on September 17th for our drinking water fees. Staff will be in the process of briefing our board members and at the same time putting together a staff report. The staff report will be prepared and be released 10 days prior to the board meeting. So anticipate that going out somewhere around September 6th, September 7th. It'll give an opportunity for stakeholders in the community to comment. And of course, we will, we take those comments into consideration. In the meantime, again, after reviewing this information, if there's anything, any concerns and things like that, we do appreciate comments, even prior to us putting together the staff report and sending it out. We are, of course, running out of time and things like that prior to this meeting, but we do appreciate any comments that you have. And if you'd like to, meet with us one-on-one, we'd be happy to meet with you. So again, September 17th, not only will we have the drinking water fee schedules be taken to the board, but we'll also have the water rights and the water quality side. Any questions or anything?
So one of the things we get asked quite a bit is, can we do a 5-year projection or what's coming up that's going to affect fees? And again, I don't have any crystal ball, but just kind of trying to read the tea leaves with the new administration. Drinking water is one of their highest priorities that they are focused on. How that will affect our program and the fees. We're not quite sure yet. SB 200, however, Monning's bill was just passed. That will probably have something. If I were a betting man, I'd bet there would probably be a ledge BCP coming up in the next cycle to address some of the provisions of that. I don't know what those would be right now, but that's likely. There's other drinking water things that the governor's focusing on very heavily, and they all focus around providing Californians who are without safe drinking water right now with drinking water. So consolidations, things like that, it's on our radar, but we can't really tell you with any certainty, what will come out of those efforts. But it is one of the governor's highest priorities. And the other area that may potentially affect drinking water fees, and again, this may be a long shot, but another one of the governor's priorities is emergency response actions. We obviously had the catastrophic camp fires and other fires throughout the state that have affected drinking water systems. Thankfully, we haven't had any fires this year, but we are dealing with some of the after effects of the recent earthquakes. So we do have, California is a geologically active state. So we do have a lot of things that have the potential of affecting drinking water systems. And that is another one of the governor's priorities, is making sure that, government is prepared to be reactive to help, Californians out with those, when those disasters strike. I think those are the only things that I off the top of my head would be related to drinking water. Bob?
Hi, I'm Bob Gore from the Guelco Group. I'm a member of the CV Salts Coalition in the Executive Committee, and I want to reinforce what John just said. Drinking water for disadvantaged communities will be a 10 to 20-year effort, and the fees are going to escalate. The Cal EPA Secretary recently emphasized to stakeholders that bottled water is not a solution. Thus, infrastructure is going to have to be built, and no one knows where the money is going to come from, but it's very clear at some point the districts will be involved as well. So brace yourselves. Thanks.
And there are some chemicals of concern coming up too that may impact some of this. For the most part, I think this year we had a couple legislative BCPs related to microplastics. Those, I believe, are all general funded, so they won't affect your fees. But PFAS, PFOA, they're perfluorinated compounds. Those are very high interest right now for a number of people, including the governor. So those will be an effort, that we're undertaking. Where are they? Where do they come from? How do they impact drinking water supplies and things like that? Again, I don't know if there's any nexus to fees there, but so far it's all been general funded work, but that doesn't mean it won't eventually skip over into the fee world. Any questions? Okay, so as I just want to reiterate, as I always do, that what David just said. We're more than willing and happy to talk to any of you about any of the aspects of the fees or the program at any time. An email, a telephone call, however you want to get a hold of us. We're happy to set aside some time to sit down and talk with you.
And just to reiterate what John just said also, if, again, we're always open to talking with you, and through, your daily business, if there's a group or someone that needs to participate, please let them know to please contact us. We're always trying to do outreach. We're always trying to, meet with other different industries and things like that and get them involved in this process. Because it's one of those things where, we when it comes to the fees, we try to be transparent. We try to get the information out. We want to get the involvement. Last thing we want is to come down to the board meeting or those last few weeks and someone come forward and say, we didn't know about it. So again, we try our best to get the information out, but we also rely on the stakeholders to help us, filter this information out. So again, we appreciate your help on that end. So if that's it, again, appreciate everyone's time. This has, kind of been a brief meeting, but again, it's kind of been a recap of our last meeting. And again, we're around to help answer any questions. And if there's something you go back and you look at the numbers and you have questions, please contact one of us. Again, thank you. Bye-bye.